Hey everyone.
Hello.
Hi.
Hey, good to see you.
Same
Good
here.
to see you, Praveen. It's been a while.
It is. It's been quite a while.
Yes.
All well with you?
Oh well. I really look forward to reading your quite insightful posts on LinkedIn. So thank you.
Pleasure, man.
Yeah.
So,
Hi, Arpan. Hi, Charlotte.
Hi, Vandana.
There as well. Excellent. Hi, Anna Maria. Hi, Anisha. Good to see you all. Oh, Harsha's coming in as well. Great. So we're just going to give it a couple of minutes before we get started.
Sure.
Normally it takes a few minutes to get everyone online. Aha. So we can all now breathe easily because Sumitra is now online. He's one of our speakers. We've got Sebastian and we've now got Somi online. Somi, good to see you. We were starting to have palpitations.
Sorry about that, Vandana. I was having just a little trouble.
No worries, no worries. Good to see you.
Same here, thanks.
So welcome to everyone. We're just going to wait a minute or so to let a few more people connect.
Good morning from London, everybody.
Hey, good morning.
Hey,
Good
Mark.
morning,
How you
Colin.
doing? I'm
Hi,
Mark.
Vandana.
Hi.
Hello.
Very good to see you, Mark. How are you doing?
Very good. Thank you for the connection on LinkedIn.
Thank you. Thank you for reaching out.
Oh, I'm truly delighted to join today. I was having to try and work out what time 5 o'clock.
Time difference, yes.
Exactly.
Yeah. Good to see Harsha. Hello. Kaushal. Hello.
Hi, Vandana.
Hi. Good to see you all.
I see Lucy's there as well. Hi,
Lucy's
Lucy.
there. Yeah. And I think Jill is connecting.
And I think Neelam was there and then she dropped off. So I think she'll be back.
Yeah.
Okay.
Great. All right. Should we, Aman, should we just get started with the introductions? I'm sure more people are going to be coming in.
I think that's a great idea. And because we like to do stuff differently, instead of doing the ladies first thing, I'm just gonna go first then.
Go for it.
All right, everyone, very warm welcome to all of you. My name's Aman. I'm, one half of Wake Up, Speak Up. And in addition to being a facilitator, coach, and a consultant that works with organizations, I also am known as the Falcon. It's a name that Vandana gave me. And the reason she calls me the Falcon is because as part of my work, I'm always helping people see more than the piecemeal view, the bigger view, the bird's eye view. So she said, okay, you're a Falcon. And yeah, that's me.
Hi, everyone. I'm Vandana Saxena-Poria. I am known as the human alarm clock because I like to wake everyone up. So I'm the wake up half of Wake Up and Speak Up. I'm also known as the porcupine because I like to poke at issues, poke at people, stir up a bit of a reaction because that's when we make progress. So, yeah.
Absolutely. And, this time we are doing something that we've never done before.
Really? Are we?
Yeah. Well, this is the first time we are repeating a topic. We've never done that before. This is diversity and inclusion take 2.
Yeah, very true. Except this time we're really going to dig a bit deeper and get even more uncomfortable with a bit of poking and hopefully get to some actionable insights. So if we think, sorry, go on, Aman.
No, I was saying maybe we want to talk about why we needed a second episode on diversity and inclusion.
Yeah, that's a good idea. We were getting a lot of questions.
Yeah, and I think the general understanding about diversity we found was we needed to build on that.
Yeah, and a lot of people were also concerned about reverse discrimination.
Yeah, and we had people asking questions around, look, there has to be diversity beyond gender.
And then we also had discontent around gender.
Yeah, and we had difficulties that women were saying, how do you deal with that discontent?
And if you do anything specifically for women, they don't like it. Some women don't like it, and a lot of men don't like it.
Yeah. And then a lot of people are saying, look, it's very easy to talk about diversity, but very difficult to put it into practice. How do you create the atmosphere that is conducive to diversity?
Yeah, and through conversations, we also, I guess we also realized just how much of a vital role self-awareness plays in creating more inclusion. And so to this end, I would like to welcome back from our last episode, Sumitra Limayev, or affectionately known as Somi from IBM. Somi, do you want to do a quick introduction?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Vandana. Good morning to those in London. Good afternoon, good evening, Europe and India, I guess. So my name is Soumitra Limaye. I've been with IBM since 2006. Very interesting stories to talk to. But I'm essentially a director of engineering at IBM. And the way I got to know about what Vandana and Aman are doing is basically through LinkedIn. So I connected on some of the great stuff that they've been doing in this space. And ever since, it's opened up a huge, thought of ideas, stream of ideas, actionable outcomes as a result of that. So an area of extreme passion for me over the last many years, and very happy to meet all of you and to share views and opinions here. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Sobi. Welcome again. And for the very first time, debuting on the show is all the way from Netherlands, Sebastian Hamers from Human Insight. Sebastian, would you tell us a little bit about yourself quickly?
Sure. My name is Sebastian Hamers, based in The Hague, the Netherlands. So everybody, hello. It's just past 12 o'clock in the middle of the day. So hopefully you're having a great day as well. So I'm a managing partner of Human Insight, and I always try to say that Human Insight is the Gartner for organization and team development. So we research basically what helps organizations drive performance from a people perspective. And we work with a lot of international business schools like London Business School, Ashridge Business School, Purdue University, and Nijrode Business University in the Netherlands, whereby our tools and kind of our research are used for insightful programs and engagements with organizations.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Welcome again, Sebastian. Looking forward to hearing both of you talk on the show today. But right at the beginning, let's talk a little bit about the diversity issues that all of us have been seeing in the real world. So this is, while we have some inputs to share with you, but very quickly in the chat box, the audience and everybody else, would you be willing to put your comments on what are the issues around diversity that you have seen?
Yeah, and in the meantime, Glenda, could you share the first slide? Because we're going to put up the most common ones that we've heard of and just mention them briefly.
Let me do that.
Aman, you're doing it. Right, okay, thank you.
All right, so, so we spoke to some of you beforehand, and here are some of the things we heard. The first thing we heard was that the approach to D&I has remained limited to gender, limited to hiring and promoting more women. So it's not, it's basically a meets the numbers exercise rather than being diversity that changes the culture.
Yeah, and so people haven't really been taught, or they've not really been able to see how diversity can help. And as a result, they see it as a checkbox exercise. Therefore, they see it as unfair because it seems like a chore, more of a stick than a carrot, because they don't really understand the true value. And that's partially because of poor communication. Yeah.
And also related to that, they don't understand the impact because they don't understand where the impact comes from. They've been looking at outward diversity rather than looking at thought diversity. We're thinking that if we just fill the workplace with more women, we're going to get more diversity. But if you're not looking at filling the workplace with women who think differently from men, then you've just got the same kind of thought diversity and you don't get those benefits.
And the other thing is, there's no point in hiring for diversity and getting all people in and then not creating the culture that really welcomes and creates the safety for that diversity.
Yeah. And, obviously, poor implementation of diversity has led to a lot of us being, dissatisfied and unhappy, even, as observers, but also as people who are being affected by it. So those are some of the things we heard.
And it's useful to just have a quick look at the chat box to see what's what people are saying. So a lot of people have said that, yeah, people in the majority group can be blind to the issues faced by the people in the minority. So I think that's absolutely, Lucy, great point there. And perhaps we can talk about later, we want to get you all involved in, brainstorming some solutions after you've heard some of the interesting perspectives that we get from our fellow people who have come. Jill's also written that many struggle with what they perceive as unfairness. And yeah, that's one of the points that we put up on the slide.
Yeah. So obviously we'd like to hear from you a little more on this as we go on.
Yeah, two really good ones coming in from Mark and Arpan as well. So global events have clearly driven lots of emotion. Yeah, and developing self-awareness has become a key topic. So yeah, the whole polarization that's happened in recent times. And Arpan also bringing up the discrimination based on appearance and accent. Coming from a background where language skills are valued, I find people from small towns struggling to get the same opportunities that their colleagues with urban English-speaking upbringing get. And that's very true. And we've seen it, just for example, in our city, which is what's known as a tier 2 city. So a very well-developed city, but not a big metro, a small population of 5.5 million people. When people come from smaller cities to this city to work, they feel inferior, and they're made to feel inferior because they don't speak English as well as somebody who grew up in a tier 2 or a tier 1 city. So great point there, thank you. Aman, over to you, let's hear.
Yeah, thanks for sharing those inputs. As we are beginning to see, there are so many shades of diversity, language diversity. Who would have thought that something like that exists? And the more we are willing to talk, the more we will unearth all these different shades of diversity. So I'm just going to take this conversation to Sebastian for some time. Sebastian, the fact is that people seem to have a limited or piecemeal understanding of diversity. Could you give us your take on how people perceive diversity and how they can actually be helped to understand it better?
Yeah, sure. And for this part, I would like to share some slides. Just
Sure,
a couple of ones, just to set up the conversation, I think, and also probably the framework that we use in our case with our organizations and customers that we work with. So we do a lot of work and research with bigger organizations, but also small ones. And the one thing we say is, well, the strategic diversity narrative, and we have a narrative and conversation around what is really what you're trying to do with diversity and how does it impact performance within your organization. And the thing that we use is a very simple model, which we've also written some research about, and I'll share the links in the chat box as well, so you can look at it. And we've published it at Harvard Business Review. So it's interesting where this has taken us also with customers. And I'd like to use the analogy of a car. So the different kinds of diversity, I see that the engine is cognitive diversity. So how we think, how we have mental models that are differently in each and other's person and minds, and how we tackle complex problems is very important, especially when you're working within teams, within organizations. Now, that's all fine, we found, especially in organizations, but there needs to be a layer behind it or around it, and that's the psychological safety thing. And there's a lot of research being done by Amy Edmondson and also others in the US context. But psychological safety starts with basically bringing yourself to the workplace. And I think we're going to have a chat as well, what IBM does in that space. But the psychological safety is creating a safe space where everybody can speak their mind and also kind of debate about certain questions that the company is facing or the direction it's going to from a strategic standpoint. But the fuel, the bigger thing around the whole context is, and this is an organization context, It's the social diversity. So the different people working within the company, if it's 50 people, 100 or 1,000, they make up a social diversity. They have different backgrounds, they have different upbringings, norms and values, etc. And it's that thing that you bring to the workplace where the context of performance comes into play as well, to understand each other, etc. So we use this three-tiered system to explain what the differences are, but also what you need to compartmentalize it for an organization, because otherwise it's going every shape or way of direction. And I just want to stop with, do you have any questions around this image that I'm sharing with you before I move forward? I'll just stop sharing. Any questions so far? Otherwise, I'll just move forward. Yeah, okay. So the thing that we're trying to do here is we're helping organizations understand the leveraging of diversity. But there are different elements of diversity. There's a gentleman called Scott E. Page, and he's based from the Michigan University, and he's coined the research around strategic diversity that we use as well. And within organizations, which is a complex system, diversity has functional properties. It makes system better. Basically what he's saying here is the more people you have in an organization, the better or diverse they are, the better they are enabled to cope with complex problems. And that's also the case that McKinsey and other organizations have researched, especially of what does diversity bring to organizations. They are more innovative, they're better performing than others, etc. So that's the strategic diversity. So it helps in the performance side. But there are different layers again. So I'm just setting up the framework and then I'll finalize. So the thing is, you can have a very multicultural, social diverse organization, but they can still be, from a cognitive diverse standpoint, very homogeneous. So what do I mean with that? We've done some research with companies in Silicon Valley, like the big tech companies. And what we see there is they're recruiting a lot of engineering people from the same schools, from the same studies, from the same kind of backgrounds. And what you create is a very homogeneous group of people skewed to one side of the spectrum. And it's interesting to see how the dialogue, but also the interactions within a company kind of take place from there, and helping them understand that you need different kinds of people also to help debate and also look at problems from different angles. So the differences of cognitive and social diversity are interesting. So you can have a very multicultural, social diverse organization, but if you're not investing in that cognitive diversity standpoint, then you're lacking something. And this is where exactly what a lot of other researchers have also seen. But what we're doing and making practical for organization is looking at your teams and people that work within your company and understanding, hey, what can we do to make this diverse? So heterogeneous teams with cognitive diverse thinking styles perform better than individuals. And that's what we see time and time again. But here comes the last thing I just want to give you. And I think this is really fascinating. It's what I'm showcasing here on the bottom left is the organizational life cycle. So what I mean with this is the phase that an organization is in is also, from a contextual standpoint, impacting the way it's working with its people. So what kind of people it's recruiting, what kind of people are already there and successful. And what we see there is that if you're, for example, a scale-up, as an organization, you want to grow your business, you want to grow to the next level. And we see that you have to think about, okay, what kind of people do we naturally need to help us move forward to the next phase, in this case, phase 3 or phase 4. And having that kind of glass to look through is very different than just saying, well, these guys are performance, let's just recruit the smartest people in the room. It doesn't work like that. It's focusing on who can help us move forward in the next organizational context. What kind of people do we have to have? What's their cognitive diversity and thinking patterns that they bring to us? And what kind of people do we need to be successful in the next phases of organizational growth? So that's what I would like to wrap up again, is these elements of diversity, coming back to this one, is cognitive diversity is basically the performance engine. Is you can have a 3 liter, a 6 liter, depending on what kind of organization you are. If you're a scale up or a startup, you probably have a smaller engine, just looking at different organizations. But the oil is the psychological safety around it, creating that safe space where everybody can speak their mind. And the last element is, okay, but if we're recruiting people from all over the place, what does that do with the values and norms that we have within our organization? What does it do with how we include them, how we respect them, etc.?
So if I could ask you,
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, two interesting points that very interesting points. Two questions came to mind immediately. When you are, when you're looking at where the organization needs to grow, in which areas it needs to develop, and you're looking at, okay, what profiles do we need? How do you go about identifying cognitive diversity? I mean, you can hire people based on outward diversity. You can hire people based on educational diversity. How do you go about looking for cognitive diversity, Sebastian?
Yeah.
One. And the other thing, if you could also, talk to us about is when you've got all these people in, how do you create a safe enough space where everybody's opinions are welcomed rather than it becoming a conflict?
The second is also a question for the group, I think.
Yeah, right.
But the first one I can tackle. So what we do with organizations, and again, we're a practice-led organization, so we like to work with companies and make it practical. The basics are, okay, what kind of hard skills are we looking for? So that's education-based, background. That's kind of the basics that we're looking for, because you need certain skill sets to be able to perform in certain areas of business. And then we use, assessments-based as well. So one thing we've developed over the last 2 to 3 decades is an assessment that looks at how do you deal with complexity, so managing complex systems and complex problems, and what's your natural contribution and mental models that you solve problems. And having that assessment, once you have a self-assessment of a person that's going to join a team, you can look at the team diversity as well. So you can look, is this team more homogeneous? Is it skewed to one area? Is it maybe lacking some contribution? Is it lacking a devil's advocate, for example? And having that debate with organizations and also the leaders of those teams and teams themselves helps to have, again, I think the second question, creating that psychological safe space. Having a real good debate about, hey, we as a team of 5, or as a group that we are on the call right now, hey, let's look at our diversity. Are we skewed to a certain place? We probably might have. And what's the organization context that we're working in? Are we a sales team, for example? Are we a financing department that has to create new metrics? So we're always looking at what's the group diversity and what's the problem or the context in which they are operating, and is there a right map that they're able to perform?
Is there a story or an example of how an organization was able to successfully do these things that you could share with us, Sebastian?
There are a couple. Okay. So I'll keep it short and sweet for this one.
Sure.
There's a US-based company that we work with that is working in the oil and gas industry, and they have a subsidiary in Egypt. Now, the CEO has been very cognizant. He's a child of South American parents that have been traveling all over the world. He studied in London. So he's very cognizant of multicultural backgrounds anyway. Mm-hmm. And that's what he tried to do with his company is based in Colorado, Denver. And he said, well, we need a exploration unit in Egypt as well, but there's a different culture altogether. So he's been trying to raise the question, how do I create an inclusive culture within the organization, which is very diverse? It's male, female, but also promote from different layers. So we said to him, well, that's great to start with, that you're open to it. So we invested a lot in looking at the whole team subsets of the US and the Egypt team. And there were differences, I must say. There were skewnesses. So the American counterparts with 40 people were skewed to different elements of the spectrum. So be more explorative, more content focused. And I'm just talking about what their thinking patterns are. And the Egypt team was more social thinking, more on the optimizing side of the business. And then they had a very good debate of, okay, what we're exactly doing in the company in the US? What are our KPIs, performance metrics, and who's doing what? And how are we going to structure the Egypt daughter company? And what are they doing, etc. And what they're especially doing from there is we gave them kind of heat maps to work on what are the differences. And also we did a deeper dive into their teams as to, okay, the functional teams that are working together, what do they look like? And have a debate around, is it the right team for the right challenge? or do you need maybe other people within the organization to have a chat with? So what we're seeing now, we've left them alone. We gave some best practices, how to work, etc., and some workshops and some guidance. And what they're doing now is very interesting. They're actually experimenting with a person who's very explorative and matching them up with a person who's very optimization focused. So one that's a natural builder or that can structure things from a cognitive standpoint, and the other one is more explorative, to see how those teams gel well in experimenting to create products for the market that fit well and nicely, and to just grow through that iteration process a little bit quicker. Does it help? Does it give an idea?
It is. It's very useful. Thanks. So it's great that the organization actually chose to address that diversity and took steps to blend these two kinds of thinking together in a team. And at least that's what I heard, and I think that's a good sign. So thank you very much for sharing that, Sebastian.
You're welcome.
We've got a couple of questions in the question box, Sebastian.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've had a chance to read them, but it'd be great to get you to just give some quick answers to them. So one from Urban.
Yeah.
About developing an appetite for cultural transformation, because there's often a lot of resistance in management and leadership to true cognitive diversity. Have you experienced that, and what do you do about it?
Yes. And one thing that comes to mind is a CEO. No. We're investing in this, but let them do it. I'm not going to do it. Yeah. What do you mean? Yeah. So what we usually start with is, it's a tiered model, is if it's a checkpoint for us as well. If the C-suite's not going to invest in it, we're not going to work with them. It's as simple as that. So we need their solidification, but also they're championing into the town hall meetings, sessions where it's online nowadays, that they're online, they're advocating what we want to do and why they want to do it. More importantly, why is it that they're choosing to invest in this? And the second element to where we're just moving forward is awareness. Just creating awareness from, this is our company, where it's headed. This is the dot on the horizon. That's what we want to do with inclusion, diversity, and our practices, and to just create a better work environment. Why is that? What's the dot on the horizon where everybody can aspire to work towards? And if you have that, or those two, basically, is the buy-in of management and that aspiration, why is it that they're doing it? Then you have a lot of buy-in from, oh, that sounds credible, let's do it. Okay, I'm going to do it as well as an employee, for example.
Brilliant, thanks. So really focused around the why and the awareness into the long term. Those are two key things. And then very quickly from Anisha, I think it's a great question. There are some companies that have focused on cognitive homogeneity, but are trying to bring about diversity in the other two areas. In your experience, how does that work? If the engine is homogeneous, does it matter how diverse the oil or the fuel is?
Good one. Yes, it does. And it depends on what kind of organization it's working. So coming back to the tech space in Silicon Valley, they have a very big problem because it's a very masculine culture. It's a lot of engineering people, which are male focused as well. And they're saying, well, we just want to have a more, we know that we want to have cognitive diversity to solve those complex problems like Google, like Yahoo or whatever. But we also need different layers of different perspectives within the organization. So they're looking at candidate selection based on cognitive diversity, like that hard set, we need to have this type of education, et cetera, et cetera. But then they have like a positive discrimination towards, okay, but if we have 5 male candidates and 1 female, let's chat with the 1 female before we go to the male counterparts as well. So they're experimenting to look at different ways of working and experimenting, which is good, I think, to have different vocal points and different, especially in the US, it's a very multicultural. Also, South America is a big part of the migrants there in the US. So it's good to have them in those different layers of representation of companies.
Great, thanks. I would like to now move on. I think, Sebastian, you've done a brilliant job of showing us the different types of diversity and how they integrate within the organization, what we need to think about. Somi, I'd love to bring you in now and ask you a few questions. A lot of people have said that the way diversity is being addressed is inadequate. It needs to go beyond the statistics. And I wanted to talk to you a little bit about how we mitigate some of these issues. And I want to start by just asking you very, very briefly, can you tell us why IBM wanted to mitigate these issues, right? But if we can keep that brief, because I really want to go on to the other areas.
Yeah, I think, from an IBM standpoint, we've really been fortunate. We've been around for 110 years now. We have a culture of diversity at the core of everything we've been doing for a long time. And when I speak culture, it's really, what Sebastian pointed to as well, bringing our whole selves to work every day. And at IBM, for example, inclusivity is articulated by something all of us try to practice every day. And that's basically, I believe, I belong, I matter. And we actually have this written on our work boards, it's constantly seen everywhere. It's reiterated all the time from top down as well. So as Sebastian was alluding to, the CEO has to understand the importance of diversity, understand the importance of addressing the why diversity. And there are a lot of things along those lines, right? Especially if you...
Sorry to interrupt you a minute. Why did it become so important at IBM so early on when nobody else was thinking about it?
Great question. And, I can just go back a little bit to history and a lot of points to talk about. But 1899 was the first time IBM hired its first female employee and African-American employee, right? 1899. This was 65 odd years before the US Civil Rights Act itself. Then, we had the first VP in 1943, who was a woman. We had, multiple things along those lines. So including sexual orientation in our global equal opportunity policy in terms of pay and everything else, career opportunities. We included, gender identity as a part of that policy sometime in 2000 odd. And there are examples from back then to now. And I think it's very interesting you ask that, because over a period of time, what we've definitely realized, and there are a lot of reports on this as well, is if you look at customer experiences, which is what a tech company or any company would really want to address, that customers, you look at compliance at as a minimum standard, opening up a wider talent pool across desired skills that we're looking for. All of these aspects, including obviously enhancing reputation. So there are things like innovation. We've seen, and there are statistics on this I can talk to, innovation increasing significantly where there is gender diversity, even more significantly when there is ethnic diversity. Right? We've seen
some stats and some examples.
Yeah, sure. So, these are reports from IBV, which is the IBM Institute of Business Value. There are reports from McKinsey, BCG, a lot of other folks as well along those lines. Generally, if I have to put numbers to all of this, the studies show that 15% increase in performance if you have gender diverse teams, 35% odd increase in performance if you have ethnic diversity. Similarly, if you're looking at things like market share, profitability. So the studies show that companies that have high inclusivity engagement have profits that are almost 3 times than those that don't really meet the criteria, right? And this study especially is across 2,900 odd companies globally, where we've also seen that the intent of an employee to stay with an organization increases, I think, 4x versus somebody who's not really putting in inclusion at the top of the pyramid and at the center of what they are trying to do as an organization. We've seen just another example to quote, right? Innovation and innovation through revenue, or innovation that leads to revenue really increases by 45% in companies that are very high in diversity scores. So, I can go on talking about that, but these are some.
Great. So 2 things there. If you have got research that you're happy to share with our group, if you send that to us, then we'll make sure, if any of you are interested, just write to us and we will send it out to you. But clearly the impact is there because the practice of inclusion, or what I prefer to call belonging, is there. So how do you practice, right? That's the key thing. this is the poison chalice that everyone talks about. And if you get it right, it becomes your uniting armor, really. So how do you practice inclusion?
So I think there are multiple facets to it, and I'll speak specifically to some of the policy as an organization that anyone can take up, and some of the things that IBM does across. If you look at, I spoke about innovation, productivity, adaptability. If I look at any employee, be it a new employee, an experienced employee, a veteran team member, essentially we are talking about stages like pre-hire, young professionals joining in, to people who are mature in the industry and on the team. And we've got programs across the board. So somebody who's young in joining, we have something called New to Blue, for example. And this really starts before day one. We call it day zero, where you have links specifically around inclusion, stories of how importance of inclusion is made in the lives of IBMers, and a lot of times their families as well. We have got these communities, the business resource groups, DRGs, where these young professionals are invited to join and gain experience, to say that with a lot of these examples and the importance of that comes through. There are reverse mentoring programs, there are family care programs, elder care programs, stuff along. I mean, there are a lot of flexible benefits, a lot of stuff. We have bring your child to work days and stuff along those lines as well. So it's a lot of it is in our minds. When you go back to some of the statistics I was talking about, that's when you realize the importance from a business standpoint, especially, that this is not just a good to have, and it's not important to be checking those boxes and ticking those boxes to be seen the right way. It's important that you're actually doing the right things, because number one, it impacts business. And number two, you need to have strong policies, like some of the ones that I was giving as examples, to ensure that you stay that course, right? And these kind of become like checkpoints as you move along. Every time you start, moving away from that, these kind of things are reminders. Hey, this is something you have. Let's use this. This is the right time of the year, or right time of, we have monthly events, stuff like that, which act as constant reminders. So that's the other part.
I was just going to interrupt you there to say that actually what you've done so well is you've just increased the mind space of every single person who works at the organization, because you're continually doing these things. And so it's in their mind all the time. And then, that old adage, whatever you think about is what you act on, et cetera, et cetera. So I guess you've increased the mind space because you've got so many committed and passionate people who are working in this area. And you've created the community so that they can, they can talk to each other. There has to be a lot of practice what you preach, though, at the higher levels, because if there isn't, then people aren't going to do it. I guess I think the challenge that we heard last time was how difficult it is. There might be 2 or 3 people at a senior level who are really committed, but many who aren't. So it's like, however's moving forward, more are pulling back. What suggestions do you have there? Anything come to mind? Yeah.
So, things like another example that comes to mind is we have this whole concept since 2018, I think we call it Be Equal badge. And what that really is there's not only a lot of content in terms of learning from an inclusion and diversity standpoint and belonging standpoint, and great content, by the way, but there's also a lot of practicality in how you get that badge. So it's actually a badge you can put on your social media, on your profiles, etc. And there's a lot of aspect, there's a huge aspect of, okay, this is what I've learned. How do I apply it? Right? Yeah. How do I apply it within my team, within my community? And you can go back, we have groups in the US who work with the churches. We have groups in India who work with the local communities, lot of, social groups of that sort. And if you can apply it there, and then you kind of come and give feedback, this is what we've done. These are some of the things that we've been involved in. That leads to actually practicing what you've learned as well. And I think that's important. I have, for the longest time, being, let's not just talk learning, let's do something more than that. And I still think that there's a lot more that can be done, by the way. But even this small thing, and people are then aspiring to get these badges. And that itself leads to a mini movement, right? Where they see their colleague doing it, or maybe their boss starts with it, or maybe it's just within their group, and then everyone wants to do it. So that kind of keeps, things like that. And again, some of the events, BRGs I talked about. So there's this constant encouragement about, hey, disability, mental health, neurology. So not just the gender aspect of it, but much beyond that as well, which is all extremely important when you're looking at diversity.
Yeah, absolutely. I just noticed Colin's put up a question. His mic's not working. How are IBM addressing the natural cognitive bias that seems to underpin lack of diversity? I know that IBM's been doing a lot in the AI space. Is that an area that it's being used for, or other areas?
Yeah, that's a great question. So AI today, and IBM being a technology company, I think it's imperative that we use technology to mitigate some of the biases that we've seen across. AI is used quite extensively today. In fact, I can talk to two, and we open source most of this. So we have something called AI Fairness 360 Toolkit, which is essentially an open source software toolkit that helps detect and remove bias in machine learning models. So believe it or not, when you're actually creating a machine learning model, which are created by us, there are biases inherently as a part of it, just because we've created it. The people who've created it had those biases, right? So how do we mitigate AI to do that? And this fairness toolkit, it's available for free, by the way, right? So you could go there, download it, try it out. What we've also done very interestingly is throughout the hiring life cycle, or the talent life cycle, as we say, how do you attract, and Sebastian actually touched on some of these points, right? Attracting a more diverse candidate pool. So you focus on the job seeker skills and preferences, and you avoid biases. What that means is you don't care about their backgrounds, or you don't want to really care about their backgrounds per se from that standpoint, because then you have, a lot of, things such as, are they from the same culture? Are they from the same country? Are they from the same city, etc.? So as long as you have the basic skills required for a particular role, a lot of times you don't really want to get into the human, unconscious and the biases related to that. So there's a tool that we call Watson Candidate Assistant that helps with stuff like that. Then you want to, look at how do you hire top talent on similar lines, regardless of the background they have, right? So there's the group of psychologists in IBM who built something called IBM Talent Assessments, and that's basically measuring skills and also sometimes cultural fitment required to be successful, rather than relying solely on the resume review of recruiters or managers, right? So it's a lot more in sync, where psychology plays a huge role in validating the assessment to ensure that tests do not introduce adverse impact really. So there are a bunch of things along those lines. In the tenure of a career of a person, we have Watson Career Coach, for example, which again, a lot of these unconscious biases that we talk about, you restrict opportunities that unconscious biases create in the development and promotion for employees, right? So that's basically from a career skill perspective, where you're saying, irrespective of what the biases are of the people who are actually evaluating you, do you have the right skills? Do you have the right thought process? Have you, shared examples of how you would like to progress, or do those examples set you in the right direction for your next progression, your internal mobility recommendations, etc. So there are a whole host of how we are using AI, right, from that standpoint.
Great. Thanks for that, and I hope, Colin, you got you got a bit of your answer. I think, whilst we had many other things that we wanted to discuss, the challenge of really being able to bring our whole self to work and everything, I think, Somi, you've given us some really interesting examples of things that can be done, and how persistent you have to be at doing it. Lucy brought up this point that even though the CEO of MasterCard was absolutely passionate and did lots, management, it didn't work as effectively. And Shubha said that, we need more to be done with mid-management. Really, I'm very interested in us, or we're all very interested in focusing on solutions or ideas, to move this conversation forward. So really interested if anyone wants to voice out or send, put some messages in. What have you found, that works especially, you know, let's assume leadership is absolutely bought into it. They see that the profits are going to go up. They've read all the McKinsey reports, but the middle layer isn't, you know, so keen on it. What have you seen that works? And Sebastian, Somi, you know, do add. Praveen, it would be great to hear from you, Shubha. Any of you, what have you seen that has worked?
So may I jump in?
Please, Praveen.
Thank you. So wonderful being here and been listening. It's fascinating, the kind of diverse conversation that is emerging. And my thoughts are like these, that, you know, we are in perhaps one of the most disruptive times, perhaps more violent in terms of you know, shaking us more vigorously rather than just physically hurting us, but psychologically hurting us and challenging all the physics that we are talking about. My concern is, you know, that the chemistry is saying something else. And if you look at US, a country I know firsthand rather well, although I've not worked there, but I keep traveling and I get a sense rather well. I think if it was all hunky-dory, the BLM wouldn't have emerged. You know, the Black Lives Matters is a shame on the US, and itself will throw up a huge amount of D&I case studies as to what didn't work. I think that's what we should be focusing on rather than tom-tomming some good practices or best practices. So look at what the KPMG UK boss did. You know, I'm sure you've read, it's all over, not only in FT or the British press, but all over in the business press. He was questioning, you know, the challenges around working from home, and he was not sensitive, and he's been asked to go. Now, you know, when you're putting someone in leadership roles who under pressure buckles and questions the good and best practices, you know, there is something wrong with the chemistry. You know, so people who may have beliefs, but when they're put under stress tests, they buckle. And then, you know, we are in times where you have COVID, which coincided with the current, you know, issues of racism in America. You know, you talked about Silicon Valley. And the problem is the American education. And most of the people you're hiring are from, say, China or India. And again, they're from very paternalistic societies. Well, some of them may be from IITs and IIMs, but that doesn't make them very sensitive to what is required in a workplace. It's not a family, it's not your home culture. There's no question of culture fit. So there are issues, and there's a problem with STEM education in America, and increasingly more and more girls are avoiding it. So what's wrong? And even boys are avoiding it. They want easier jobs. They want. So the issue is, you know, COVID. It has put a lot of stress, and the bigger challenge that is coming is climate change, and the biggest pressure is on women. Now look at Japan. Their ex-Prime Minister Mori. Yeah, he was the head of the Olympic Committee. He's been asked to go. Now, what a stupid thing he says. Now, just because you're prime minister of a great country doesn't make you sensitive to D&I. You know, he was.
I mean, what you're basically saying is we've got to hold people accountable, right? And at all levels within the organization, and not allow things to go, but also that sometimes having some form of polarization is in a way good, because at least it brings up those issues.
Precisely. So I'm saying we are at a cross junction where we are getting tested. All the stress test is happening. You know, we've seen rest of economies, howsoever profitable their businesses is, sometimes just using D&I as bullshit, because it's not because they had great diversity, but they managed to get there. Both America and Japan have kind of disproved that. So we need to kind of allow the stress test and not just talk about the physics of D&I, but also the chemistry. So
that's a really good point. Thank you. Thank you so much, Praveen, for sharing that. Praveen runs one of India's largest insurance companies. So it's.
Well, I don't work anymore, so I.
Well, okay, so you were. That was your previous role. So great to get your perspective there.
If I just can add something, Vandana. Yeah, I think, what Praveen is bringing up is something that we had hoped to talk about on this webcast, but we've not brought it up yet. And I think this is a great opportunity to bring that up. You see, we actually talked about the role that self-awareness and self-work actually has to play in developing cultures that support inclusion, belonging, etc. Now, like you said, the Prime Minister, or rather a very senior politician in Japan, or what's happening in other organizations as well, all of this is pointing to one thing, that look, all your education, all your exposure, all your experience cannot somehow get rid of your masculine bias or your social bias. And one of the, now your CEO can want to promote diversity, but unless you're going to invite your top leadership, middle leadership to actually examine your own cognitive biases, unless you're going to create programs that invite people to take a hard, long look at who they are as individuals and the kind of impact they have on their teams and diversity, we may actually not be able to overcome these things. So self-awareness programs, I think, need more place in the working world if you're going to try and change the culture. Otherwise, we're going to have highly qualified, very biased individuals saying the kind of things that Jill had to hear today. Middle managers, I mean, it's not a complaint. I'm going to say it like it is. It is coming from preconditioned male bias.
Absolutely.
That's what it is.
Yep.
And we've got to be able to help them see where it's coming from. Otherwise, validated in saying all of this stuff.
Yeah, very passionately said. I love it. Thank you. Aman, why don't you share the slide of solutions while we go to Jill? Because I think Jill wanted to say something. But Aman, thank you. That was a great speech.
Aman, I wish you would have been there for my training this morning.
I was wishing that I would have been there. I would have told them, look, where do you think this is coming from? Because this is not backed up by any science.
Yeah. So the comment I wanted to make was inspired by Praveen, one of the things that you said, because right now I'm working with one of my colleagues to put together some research on mapping social justice movements across the globe. So you mentioned Black Lives Matter and kind of seeing what has worked and not worked in different places, in different situations, in different contexts, and how these social justice movements are movements for equality and equity. Yes, are happening all over the world. And where do we see similarities and differences? And even so far, what I've seen in the research is that there's not that much that we can just pick up and apply, given the, obviously the diversity of these different situations and contexts. So even the concept of race and what that means, the concept of experiences of colonialism, being the colonizer, etc., is so incredibly different. And bringing it back to the workplace discussion, when I go into sessions, and I'm not sure if anyone else in the room has had this before, we can talk about best practices and we can talk about inclusive behaviors, and everybody wants this like 10 actions that we can do to be inclusion champions. And I personally feel that's total BS. I'm like, there are some actions and behaviors that might be relevant to all of the variety of different groups or companies that you work with. But I have to try and explain to individuals in a session that this is so very specific, not only to your organization and your team, but to who you are as a leader or manager from within that group. So I cannot just give you a prescription like a doctor and say, this is what you have to do and you'll become an inclusion champion. And so I've also felt that I've got a little bit of resistance from people who are just wanting to just tell me what to do, just tell me what to do.
So Jill, can I butt in there? This is a really interesting point. The problem is that throughout our whole schooling system and with our parents, a lot of us, we've lived binary lives. It's instant gratification, you pass or fail. What we fail to understand is that cognitive diversity and creating cognitive diversity in our own heads is like going to the gym. It's like you're not going to get an Angelina Jolie body or a Brad Pitt body from going to the gym once. You won't, right? You've got to do, this is a process, this is a journey. And I think that is the message that I think we should also be taking to our, to our workplaces, that this is not, it can't be done by checkbox. And if you're thinking this is checkbox, then you're going to be out of a job within a couple of years, because we really need people who embrace diversity. The other thing that I wanted to say is going on to what Aman said as a solution. One of the things that a few of us here have actually developed is a way to use fiction to actually go into, when you're reading something, because it's not you, your amygdala and the fear and the uncertainty doesn't trigger as much. So when you use fiction and you go into a fictional situation of something that happens, it's much easier to get people to explore boundaries and their own subconscious boundaries. And so that's a product that some of us have developed and we've deployed at various places. And we're getting really interesting results because people are starting to see things, and they're also starting to see their own biases. We need that mirror coming up more than anything. So thanks, Jill. I don't know if you have anything else to add. We were going to extend for 10 minutes if that works. Sebastian, over to you. And then
yeah, sure. I have just one question for Jill. She sparked me on when she was talking, is that there aren't best practices for organizations to work on these topics. But I think you mentioned one important one is the behaviors and that people showcase. And what we do with organizations that we work with, especially on this topic, we also try to incorporate what are the behaviors we're showcasing in the organization day to day. What are the routines that make up the way that we work with each other that are inclusive or not? And what are the emotions that people are showcasing within the organizational context and feeling at that moment? And within these three, it's not a best practice, but talking about these three elements, and we can measure them, and that's more important, I think, to also showcase from a statistical, analytical standpoint is, hey, this is what the organization is facing. You C-suite, you're saying one thing, but the organization is actually seeing completely different, or they're emotionally entangled in something completely different. So having a chat about, or also incorporating the behavioral side of things, the routines that we're showcasing day to day in having a conversation with each other, and also the emotions that people are facing, is very interesting to allocate in this domain, I think. And that's, I think, very important to take with you also into engaging with others.
If I may, thanks, Sebastian. I was very intrigued by this conversation, and there's a question brewing in my mind which I want to pose to everyone here. See, a lot of us, we are affected by all of this. We're very passionately engaged. So here's a thought. One of the things that I've seen working is this: that if you want something to improve on your team, whether it's overall performance or performance on one parameter, the more you talk about it with those people and with the team, the more the chances of your team succeeding at meeting that parameter. Now, I'm not sure whether this constant reviewing is happening at a granular level when it comes to diversity and inclusion. Now, Soumitra did suggest that at IBM, there seems to be a lot of conversation around this, and probably which is why IBM is seeing these, gains. But here's a question: what do you think about this? Because organizations and teams tend to be very task focused. The leadership is task focused. It's full of people who are, high on achievement and all of that. And there isn't a lot of people and inclusion focus, in organizations. Now, can we make progress if we address these two things? If we incorporate a regular focus on at a granular level on inclusion initiatives, weekly meetings, fortnightly meetings where we talk about it, and will it help if we actively improve the cognitive diversity of the top leadership to include more people-focused executives rather than have very task-heavy people out there? So that's a thought. That's two thoughts.
Can I say something about this?
Sure, Lucy.
Please, Lucy.
Yeah, so yeah, I'm completely in line with you, Aman. And in fact, what I like to do when I deal with my leadership team, so leaders who report to me, is set some qualitative objectives. And I'm not talking quotas or, but really to have this question regularly every time we meet on a one-to-one meeting to talk about the results and how they're doing. We talk about the task, but we also talk about what have you been doing for diversity? What did you do? What did you notice? What can we change? What's the improvement that you could be?
Awesome. Lucy, you dropped off. Are you still there?
Oh, I think
She's gone.
Okay, why don't we go to someone else and then we can add in?
Mark is raising his hand.
Hi guys. One of the things we've really tried to do in the 150 more years at John Lewis is ensure that we focus on the what, just picking up what Lucy was saying, and also the how. So when leaders are working with employees, when we call them partners in our business, because our partners have a vested interest in our business and a share of profits, and particularly through the COVID pandemic, the how has become the really big lens. How are leaders achieving results? How are our partners contributing? And how are our partners being themselves? Actually, interestingly, we've just published our first Be Yourself at Work report, which really calls out the imperative of the priority of partners being themselves and bringing themselves always, which is one of our 5 values in the business, and therefore empowering partners to bring subjects to the table with great facilitation. And therefore, further up the line as a leader in our business, when I review the what, the quantitative results in a retail business with my leaders, we also spend a greater emphasis on how they achieve those results. So I would just echo the points that have already been made.
Yeah, thanks, Mark.
And if I'm back online,
you're back.
Yeah, okay. I would like to say, indeed, the how is exactly what I was talking about, is having those qualitative discussions, not measured by metrics and KPIs and all that. We have that to measure, again, the task, but really to keep it top of mind. Now, another point I want to make is data is super important, right? What I saw in the organizations where I worked is when data is available, when there is transparency about salaries, about promotions, about where we're hiring from, including certain very sensitive topics like caste, religion, gender, if we're talking about an India context, it helps people really realize that there is a problem. Sometimes it can be extremely difficult for people in the majority to see the problem. And the example I have in mind is in my previous company, we were all very happy that we had more women, a larger percentage of women, but no one had looked at the data of at which seniority levels were these women located. And when we actually put a very simple Excel chart and showed it to the executive level by saying, yeah, you have plenty of assistants and you have not even one single VP, that is a problem, even though you have 30% women in an engineering field. That triggered a lot of changes because it put this top of mind for people. They were all well-intentioned. They were not deliberately blocking women from accessing the VP level, but they had no idea, very simply, no idea.
So calling it out, having, discussions about it, about what are you going to do, and saying, yeah, it's not about the absolute number. It's really about the, what it's meant to be doing. So that's great, Lucy. Thank you. Who else wanted to speak? Arpan, are you there? I think he's on silent. He put a couple of points up. Is Somi back? Oh yeah, Sumitra, you're there?
Yes, I am.
Yeah, I just wondered if you, Jill put a comment up. Jill, do you want to just, your comment was the problem with the metrics is there might be bias in there?
Yes. So I've always had this nagging feeling, and whenever I go into a new engagement with an organization, I ask them, okay, what metrics do you use for measuring engagement or measuring you know, employee attitudes around certain topics, and any of these things that we've been talking about. And even I work with a lot of these metrics, so I will call that out as well. I'll be one to say, why don't we look at an inclusion index and things like that. At the same time, I've always had this nagging feeling that, you know, the creators of these metrics as well, there's a lot of bias that exists in the way we measure what is considered to be the ideal situation, or what that psychologically safe space looks like. What is a friendly environment? And so there's these universal definitions or expectations around what that should look like. And I just feel that that's still very dominated in Western and often masculine sort of business culture. So I start to think, you know, maybe that there's some systemic stuff going on as well. And even with the best intentions using these metrics, we should start to question maybe our even at that level, what are our definitions, and what is it that, you know, is this really inclusive, the metric that we're actually using? So that's what I was mentioning by that comment.
And Jill, great point. I think that's extremely important to understand. And I can tell you what we do at IBM. And, you know, obviously there are things that need to be done differently or beyond as well. But, you know, you talked about the engagement pulse or engagement survey, right? We do that annually for sure. And then there are these small mini pulse kind of surveys where there are specific questions. And it's a different matter, you know, if people don't choose to answer. So it's completely confidential, number one. Number two, I mean, no matter which HR, which manager, you can't find this answer because it doesn't even stay with IBM. It goes to a third party, right? So that's the first thing. But importantly, there are questions asked about how do you feel in your workplace? How do you feel in your environment? It's not just a number that you're getting to. A lot of it is the questions are molded in such a way that it talks to your feelings. And the more you express, we also have AI mechanisms in the backend that interpret how these feelings are actually seen. So it could be as simple as, okay, this person feels happy because that's what the AI is reading from the tone of the message. Or it could be seen as positive. It could be seen as, you know, in similar lights. It could be seen as threatening. It could be seen as, or when I say threatening, I mean the employee feels threatened, or the employee feels, there's some bias going on, right? So I, again, being somebody from the technology field, I think there's a huge use of technology, as I was alluding to earlier, in these tools that we have. You're absolutely right. There is bias. And what we are trying to do is using AI today to actually look at these biases itself. So in a way, we are going around this circle, right? But I think a lot of it should come down to just basic human feeling. How do I feel every day when I go to office? How do I feel in my workplace? Do I feel comfortable to share, what I have on my mind with my colleagues, with my peers? And, end of the day, I do feel it's important to measure some of this for the simple fact that's the only way you're going to understand if there are improvements being made. So being data-driven is extremely important. At the same time, the algorithms that we have, I definitely agree with you that there are inherent biases in it, and therefore there needs to be, persistence in ensuring that we change that.
Yeah, I think great point, Somi. Thank you. Thank you for that.
Absolutely. So, Sebastian, you raised your hand there. I think we are about towards the end of the 10 minutes extra that we'd asked everyone for. You got a comment, Sebastian?
Yeah, I'll keep it short. I think one of the elements that we see, it's tying into Jill's remark, is engagement. Yeah, I have a big problem with engagement because what are you going to do with the engagement number? Because it's a complex problem to solve. If your engagement is low, okay, where are you going to invest money in? Is engagement programs? Yeah, it's going to solve some, but it's not going to enlarge the bigger number. Yes, no. And I think that Sumitra is saying also, how am I feeling in bringing myself to the workplace, can be built up of a lot of factors, and it's very broad. Is my family doing okay? Am I social, economic doing okay, etc., etc. So one of the elements I think comes back to that one again, and I think I like what Jill is framing it nicely, is there is kind of social bias in that one, but you can take that out by having a conversation with people on different layers and different continents of the world, just saying, how are you seeing the organization at the moment? How is your team coping with the elements that you're solving or trying to do? And what's the diversity within your team? So getting it from a global more to a regional perspective, and what's their, again, mental models that they bring into the place, and having a debate about that one, I think is very powerful and rich, and also should not be underestimated in this one.
Great, thank you. Somi, any last words from you? I think he may be busy. Okay, so I mean, it is time for us to kind of wind up the show. Just leaving with you, leaving a couple of points with you. It's clear that it is persistency. It is a long game, and it is a process. So we shouldn't forget that. It might seem like we're only making baby steps, but actually these are baby steps that are going to be giant steps for the future. Aman?
Yeah, so, apart from the fact that persistence will play a role here, and, data will play a role here, two other things that came to mind that might play a role are self-awareness, which, we said is definitely going to be a factor. And I think the other important factor was, safe spaces, because you see, I think safe spaces can actually help us create the right metrics, have the dialogue, encourage inclusion, all of that. One of my friends, Adit, who was on the previous episode but couldn't really hang on here, one of the things he said is, can we leave diversity initiatives in the hands of the experts who actually know things about safe spaces and inclusion? And I think that's such an important point. So just wanted to reiterate those 4 points that came up and got discussed today.
Great.
So yeah.
I think we're going to have to wrap it up. We are already at 6:12. So Aman, what is the next topic that we are going to be talking about on Wake Up, Speak Up?
So the next topic that we'll talk about is called the skills gap. Why do we never seem to narrow it? So on the next episode, we're going to talk about why has the skill gap remained a gap for so many decades.
Or even bigger. But thank you everyone for being part of this conversation. Thank you for your thoughts in the chat box. And please tell us online, on LinkedIn, what steps you personally are going to take to increase your awareness of your own cognitive biases. We'd really love to see you. Be brave, be courageous, and see you next time on Wake Up, Speak Up. Thank you.
Thank you.